Welcome, everyone, to Dead Talk Live. And tonight we are joined by writer, director, actor Jason William Lee. Jason, thank you so much for being on our show. How are you doing tonight?
Really great. Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
Oh, it is my pleasure to talk with you, and we have a lot to talk about. And
Yeah.
my first question to you is, was it writing and directing that led you to acting, or was it the other way around?
It was actually the other way around. Totally. I started out as an actor or a wannabe actor, I guess you'd say. I moved from Edmonton in 2000 to be an actor. And I did that for a while, and I realized how I wasn't really making any headway. So I started making short films with some friends. Really started to enjoy getting behind the camera and especially writing. I think writing is my favorite thing out of the three. But yeah, no, I love everything about film. I think I just became a film fanatic as a little kid, and I remember memorizing lines from movies so I could get through classes in high school and just like instead of having to sit there. So it was always kind of in me, I guess, to film. But in Edmonton, it didn't seem like it was a possibility, so I had to move out west. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so you're in the United States right now.
No, I'm in Vancouver,
Oh,
so
Vancouver.
I
Okay.
just moved. It's like Hollywood North, right? It
Oh,
was
yeah.
our big film hub in Canada is here in Toronto, but
Yeah.
mainly do a lot of film and television here as well.
Yeah. The two hot spots in Canada, of course, Toronto, like you mentioned, and Vancouver. Toronto more recently, I remember back in the 90s, almost every TV show was being shot in Vancouver.
Oh yeah, like huge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still a lot of all the DC and Marvel stuff. Like the spin-offs are all shooting here, and a lot of them in Toronto as well. So it's kind of a competition. But yeah, we got lots of great film and TV up here.
And, in today's virtual world, you do not need to be in LA or even New York to excel in this industry. Do you agree
No,
with that?
I do. It's changing, especially since the pandemic. Like I had to quit acting for a while because of after Funhouse, I kind of needed to go and get a job to make some money, and so it was hard to, as an actor, any actor would know before pandemic times. It's like you needed to have a job where were available any day
Hmm.
of the week during the day to go out, for a couple hours a day and audition, which is totally inconvenient as a trying to have a job. So
Exactly.
you're either like a waiter or a valet, or you're doing something, or you're independently wealthy, and I was none of those. So now that the pandemic happened, I kind of have been able to get back into. I just got back from an audition right before I got on here. It actually
Wow.
is my first in-person audition since the pandemic started. So that
Wow.
was interesting.
That's crazy. So, going back to the writing and directing, how important is it to you as a director to be able to direct the stuff that you wrote?
You know, I've everything you kind of make your own work, and so everything I've written, I've directed. I've never let anyone else direct it, but I would be totally open. Like I've written some scripts that seriously would cost ridiculous amounts of money to make. I just wanted to do a little. I've written like 14 scripts, and I think from the least expensive one you could do for like Funhouse or The Evil in Us, I did one for my first feature was like 200,000 American, and I've written stuff that would literally cost $200 million American to make. And
Wow.
I know that I would never probably be allowed to direct that until I prove myself a lot more as a director. But I would, if a guy like Zack Snyder or somebody wanted to come along and direct my stuff, I'd be more than happy.
I mean, 200,
Tarantino.
200 million, that's like on the level of the Marvel Cinema
It
universe.
is. I wrote this one script. It's called The Nazi, and it was one of my just passion projects where it's about another planet, creatures, war. It's like 300 meets Lord of the Rings meets. It's I love movies like that, and I wrote a couple movies like that. But I am also a realist in the sense that I know I won't be able to direct those movies per se at this time. I'm hoping to one day, but
Hey, you never know. You
You
never
never know,
know.
right? Crazier things have happened.
How big is action to you? Because you mentioned like 300, big action film, great film. When you're writing your scripts, do you try to incorporate a lot of that sci-fi action into them?
I honestly I like some action, but I don't like long action sequences that go on forever. I'm not a big like action James Bond kind of film guy. I love story. I love characters. So even in the stuff that I've written that's bigger budget, I think it's really more about the characters and
Mm-hmm.
their you know quest for their character arc and trying to get reach their goals. And all my stuff is pretty dark too. So it's like I'd written a lot of them that I wrote like 15, 10 years ago, and I was really upset when I watched. I wasn't upset, but it's like when I watched Game of Thrones and they were doing the whole thing where they kill off all their main characters. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, I was doing that like 15 years ago, but now it's become something that's more popular, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
It,
but there,
it
yeah,
annoys the fans. It upsets them when it happens, but just let a little time pass, and then they realize, it's critical for the
yeah,
surviving characters that death is to propel the surviving character's story arc forward. So,
totally,
it has become more popular, and a lot of shows like Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead has been doing it for 11 years now. So
yeah.
it's definitely a trend that's picking up. Now, let's reverse the previous question. How comfortable would you be directing somebody else's writing?
Um, I would be comfortable. I've done it once. I did a TV pilot a few years ago. A friend of mine, Dave Peniak and Matthew Lutz, did a TV series called The High Five about five friends who start a weed grow up. So it was actually the timing was really good. I know it's been probably done a lot of times since then, but it was basically like a silly comedy about just five friends trying to work their way through, you know, trying a weed dispensary basically,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fun. It was a lot of fun to do. I had an acting part in it, which was great. I played a total douchebag banker, which is always a good time. But it was the first thing I've ever directed that wasn't my own writing, so it was fun. It was interesting. I would definitely be down for it.
Now, would you say the majority of your writing stuff that has gotten picked up, that hasn't gotten picked up, revolves around horror, the darker nature of the world?
No, actually, like I said, I've written about 14 scripts, and I'd say three of them have been horror.
Okay.
So in the beginning, I kind of just wanted to, when I moved to Vancouver in 2000, my goal was to write a script from every genre so that I could go and get a writer's agent. And, that was the goal. And I was very naive in how fast and, how long it takes to
Yeah.
get yourself. Some people, can do it fast, but my trip has been like a slow and steady, wins the race, hopefully. But my first scripts were drama. My drama is my favorite type of movie, and then comedy and horror. I love movies, right? I just love
Mm-hmm.
good movies. But the only reason I got into horror really was I had hooked up with my producing partner now, Michael Giori, and back in 2012 they needed content for they wanted to make a feature, and he was just an acquaintance of mine, and I saw that he was doing some cool stuff with movies, and we had a lunch, and I shared a few scripts with him, and he really liked them, and so we got a small $150,000 investor, and we looked at all my scripts that I had, and we're like, "There's no way in hell we can make one of these because some of them were like $10 million scripts, and some of them, I think the lowest one we could have done would be like 1.5 million, and there's just no way with 150 grand I wanted to waste trying
Yeah.
to do a movie that big. So I wrote a horror movie. We agreed that horror movie would probably be the best way to get an ROI for our investor. And I wrote The Evil in Us, which is a pretty contained horror movie. It's my first feature. We filmed it in 2014 and it got released in 2016. And then for Funhouse, we got into Sitges. I don't know if you probably know Sitges Film Festival. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a big horror festival in Spain. We got into like a midnight screening out there for The Evil in Us, and our a guy named Henrik, who's a movie producer, saw it and he really loved it, and he gave me a call and basically said, I want to make this movie, and this was the idea for Funhouse. And I thought it was all bullshit to begin with, because you know how you get approached by someone, oh, I want to make a movie. In this industry, if you're in it for long enough, you know that you get so much crap, thrown at you. Want to do this, I got that, and they got the money. And I don't believe anything until the cameras are rolling anymore.
Yeah.
Henrik was the real deal, and he got it together. And he was able to get one of the Skarsgård brothers, Walter Skarsgård, for the star of Funhouse, and that really, made us got us the ability to make that movie, because we got early distribution.
Nice.
And
we're going to be getting into Funhouse and The Evil in Us in a little bit. I just got to ask you one more question before we get to that. Now, with Hollywood entertainment evolving because of the COVID pandemic, do you feel like if you write something in the horror genre, which is generally known to be cheaper to make, cheaper to film compared to some other genres, you have a better chance of it being picked up?
Well, the idea was, because for The Evil in Us, although we had fantastic actors, none of them at that time were big names. So I think horror, you can get away with more than any other genre to not need big names, because, I guess Squid Game is an example. Although I'm sure those actors in Squid Game are huge in Korea. Yeah. I don't think they're very well known worldwide, but it doesn't matter, because, it became a phenomenon, as we know. So I think that was the kind of catalyst to that. It's like, well, let's do something where we don't need big name actors to sell. Now, what I've learned since then, you still need big name actors to sell movies at markets, unfortunately. But unless you have something like a Blair Witch or a Paranormal Activity that just blows the audience away, and you get lots of marketing money.
But Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, those are the exception to the rule.
Totally. Those are two of the most profitable movies of all time. I think Paranormal Activity is the most profitable movie of all time, and we all know it became a multi-billion-dollar franchise that launched Blumhouse, and things can happen. But I think that was only like a $30,000 film right in the beginning. So
I think it was 10.
Exactly. So that shows you can get there. You can get lucky. Not lucky. They did an amazing job at creating something, but they also had a really interesting marketing platform.
That's what I say about Paranormal Activity. They nailed the marketing.
Well, didn't they do the whole reaction?
Yeah, the theater and people like covering their faces. I don't think they showed a single scene from the movie in the trailer.
No, it's smart. That was new, right, back then.
Yeah, it was smart. And the way they marketed that, I mean, hats off. And the movie, of course, you got to back it up at the end. And the movie lived up to the hype. Now, you mentioned Funhouse. It's centered around 8 celebrities who take part in this online reality game contest, sort of like Survivor, getting voted off the island.
Brother.
Yeah, Big Brother. So where did you come up with the concept of with the celebrities, making it virtual, online, and combining all those elements with like Big Brother and Survivor and all and all those types of shows?
Well, actually, it was Henrik's idea, the producer from Sweden. He had a very basic kernel of an idea that was he wanted to make a movie about kind of Instagram stars or celebrities that get invited to compete in an online reality show. That's pretty much all he kind of gave us the basic gist, and he said, would you write it and direct it? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'm never going to give up an opportunity, even though that type of movie isn't my forte necessarily. Like I said before, like all good movies and even violent movies I have no problem with, but I was a little nervous because it's kind of a disturbing movie, it's like Saw in a way, and although I enjoyed the first Saw or whatever for what it was, it's not my cup of tea necessarily, so I was a little nervous because I didn't want to go necessarily down that road because it was such a disturbing concept, but like I said, I needed some more experience as a director, so I, take what you can get kind of thing. But I was really
Exactly.
happy because he gave me a lot of leeway with, like, I wanted to have like some social commentary on, desensitization to violence and voyeurism and how kind of that's happening on the internet as we speak in some ways, right? And
Exactly.
misinformation and all this stuff, right?
Exactly. Now, in Funhouse, a lot of the characters represent a lot of the social media stereotypes that we see out there today. What is called influencers in
Mm.
today's world. Okay. Everybody's out there to try to get as many followers as they can because they have this misconception that if they reach a certain number of followers in their head, boom, they're rich. And that's just not the case.
No.
Now, how were you able to balance those character stereotypes without falling into that satire trap where it's pushed a little too far?
Well, I guess it depends who you ask if we went too far, but I tried to make them all relatable and and have some humanity because that's the fact about all influencers as well. They're people, just like actors.
Yeah,
It's like people think they know somebody because they see them online all the time or they see them in movies, and that's never the case, as you
hmm,
know. It's like you meet your that's why meeting your heroes or your people that you think are one way, it's always totally different.
hmm,
But everybody's human, and everybody has a story. Unfortunately, with influencers and with Instagram and all these platforms, they're putting their most ideal story forward, and everybody knows that's not necessarily the
no,
case, right? But
yeah,
that doesn't mean it doesn't affect people regardless. Even if you know all this is bullshit, you still get affected by it. I know I do.
me
Um,
too. And the perfect, it's not even with influencers,
yeah,
like Facebook. Every non-celebrities, friends, families, they always try to put their best face forward in regards to their family. Look at us, we're the ideal family on vacation and whatever. And I know people who, they know rationally that it's this person, laying out what they want to lay out. It still affects you. Oh, why, man, we need to go on more vacations. We need to do more of this. And it really screws with you psychologically.
oh, totally. And I'm guilty of it as well. It's like the only time I really post stuff online is about movies and stuff like that I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing to try and promote them. And I know you have to do that. But it makes people, honestly, some people think that I have this glamorous, like, I'm making all this money, I'm doing all these things, and that is totally not the
Mm-mm.
case. Anybody who's done a movie or indie film knows that it's like anything. It's like the music industry. You see just the tip of the iceberg that are making all the money. It's the same with indie film.
Yeah,
You can make a living. Hoping to get there soon someday. But the people you see that are really up there, it's all the same people, right? And then you get
exactly.
these breakout movies or whatnot, like Squid Game or whatnot. But that guy apparently was broke just before Squid Game, and I understand exactly how that works, right?
Yeah, I got a perfect personal example. I told one of my distant cousins that I got a distribution deal and this show is going to be distributed on television. And he's like, "Oh man, now that you're rich, can you buy me like this Porsche?" I'm like, "Oh
Exactly.
my God."
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and like, and you have to be crazy, honestly, to make indie movies a little bit because, like, I love it. I'll never stop now. And now I'm pot committed because, like, I went to university, I did all these things, and then I'm like, I hate everything I'm doing in the workforce, so I moved here to be an actor. And that was 21 years ago, and I
Yeah.
thought it would be like 6 months and I'd be a star. I'm
Mm-hmm.
totally naive.
Yeah.
20 years later, I'm still just grinding away to try and make movies, and I love it, and I won't ever stop, but that is the reality.
Exactly. It is. A lot of people just think because you're in front of a camera, you're automatically rich. That's not the case. Now, going back to Funhouse, what were some of the challenges you faced in creating the imagery and the look of the film, which was really great? It was very entertaining. Did you face any challenges in bringing that vision to us as the audience?
Yeah, no, it was the first time I'd ever done something where we actually built a set. We built the Funhouse in a warehouse out in Langley, which is a suburb of Vancouver out east. And we basically, like, because we knew we couldn't find any locations that fit the bill, so we're like, okay, we have to, because you open up a lot of possibilities when you
Yeah.
build your own set. Obviously, you build it for filming, so you give yourself room, you do this, that, and the other. So that was the first time I'd ever done that, but that comes with major challenges. You're building a house basically inside a warehouse, and obviously all the walls are this thin, and they look, everything looks like it's solid, but you could like knock it over if you hit it. Yeah, so that was a huge challenge, but our production design team really, got to the challenge, and it was an amazing experience just all around. I was going for something a little different in my mind, but everything changes as you go along. I was going more ex machina kind of sterilized feeling, but we didn't obviously have that kind of budget. Where there's no wind, or there is no windows in Funhouse either. But I wanted to be extremely claustrophobic, and but I really like what they did in the
Yeah,
end.
yeah, it was amazing. And you mentioned there is social commentary in this movie on how the audience is as guilty as, the killer in this because they are egging it on in a way. How important was the social commentary of Funhouse important in getting it across to the viewers?
To me, that was like paramount because I didn't want to go into something just to have a, torture porn, like killing for the sake of killing. I don't, I needed to have a reason behind why this guy's doing it. Um, and although I would, it's extreme, but I think some of his viewpoints are valid.
Mm-hmm.
In this day and age, like we talked about, and I have nothing against celebrities or influencers. I'm like, hey, if I could work a job in like I said, I was in an office job in a cubicle hating it, so I tried to be an actor. So if I can go be a TikToker and make $1 million, like why not? That's amazing.
Exactly.
Having a good life, having fun doing it. Unfortunately, like you said, there's only a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage that are ever going to make money. So, but like his Nero, the villain's, basic messages, the scientist, the physicist, the person curing disease should be the one who's the influencer, right? Who's getting
Mm-hmm.
the accolades. Unfortunately, it's about sex tapes and
Yeah.
voyeurism and doing the most crazy, outrageous stuff. So it's just, I think it's the wild west of social media that we're gonna look back at this time and be like, holy crap, we lived through that because we basically have just breached the surface of what's happening, and there's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
dangers out there. And there's going to be a time, I think, in the near future when, unfortunately, the government has going to have to step in. They're already looking at what's happening with Facebook and whatnot, because these platforms can be used for nefarious purposes and
Oh yeah.
uncontrolled, right?
Oh yeah.
People argue, well, that's you're going against freedom of speech, but guess what? When it gets to the point where like elections are being stolen, like 2016 or whatever's happened, or where misinformation is used and weaponized, then you got some problems on your hands, and a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't know the answer, but it's coming.
And these social media companies, I mean, they're not equipped. No company can be equipped. Facebook, for example, to handle 2.5, 3 billion active users a month. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's insane. So in this film, the pace of the film is very good. It's very consistent. It's a nice build up, and it's the pacing is kept very tight. Is the term that I would use throughout the film. Uh, when you watch the final product, what did you feel about how the film paced itself and kept the tension going throughout the entire film?
Well, we were the pacing. This is our distributor kind of had their say in our pacing because they always want it shorter, right?
Mm-hmm.
They wanted it an hour and a half, and it ended up being an hour and 45 minutes. So we actually went longer than they wanted. And my thinking is a movie should be as long as it needs to be. That's just the way it
Yeah.
is. And I thought that trying to knock that down to 130 or a 90-minute movie would be almost been impossible.
Mm-hmm.
The first cut of the film, I'm the editor too, so it was 2.5 hours. So I don't know how that happened because it was only a 108-page script. So I don't know, something went wrong there. But it was really long. But one side note was there was a whole side story about an FBI investigation who I was one of the lead FBI agents. So I actually cut my entire part. I was like actually quite a large part, and I cut the entire FBI side story, which got us down quite a bit. And that was for a bunch of reasons, like mainly because the FBI office that we had didn't look legit. Unfortunately, and that comes down to budget. It just didn't look real. Like this is supposed to be a worldwide investigation, and we didn't look like it was had that scope that we needed. So unfortunately, we had to cut it, and that's okay. I'm not worried. I think it paces better because of it. But a lot of people online are like, "Well, how come the police didn't find them or the cops?" I went into great detail in the other story about how the Nero, the villain, was hiding the signal using Tor networks and onion routing. I talked to a hacker. It was all legit. He was using like onion routing through wind farms and different, like really cool hacking lingo that I had no idea about that you could do. But it is possible to hide a signal on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Never be found. Like people think, well, they'll just track it down. Not if you know what you're doing.
No.
That's the kind of scary thing as well about, internet and dark.
And they made it easy, like you mentioned, Tor. It's a browser. You go onto Tor and you use it as a browser. It's not the regular .com sites. They're called onions on Tor.
Yeah.
And you can disguise your identity, and a lot of bad stuff goes on the dark web.
And people don't understand that, and that's like the truth. I tried to explain it. I took all the FBI side story and put it into one newscast with my buddy Baytesh, who is an actor in most of my films, but he basically just did a kind of explanation as a hacker, good hacker, that was working with the police to explain what was happening. But
yeah. Now, touching on the antagonist, the villain of Funhouse, there's a lot of him that is sort of kept mysterious about him. Was that done intentionally for you to leave it up to the viewer to sort of fill in the blanks?
Yeah, no, I think he definitely, obviously he has to keep his identity hidden. So we used the panda as avatar as, the kind of host of the show that was kind of interacting with the players and with the people on the internet. So, I definitely wanted to keep that as much of a secret as possible, but he also wants to be seen as well. So I kind of, that was where the tongue-in-cheek ending happened there. So,
Now, it's pretty interesting in the film how it's done democratically and voted on how people should be killed. How did you come up with that to incorporate that into this? The movie, if you break it down and you take the story, it really is genius. It is unique in its own way. With the whole democratic voting system and how to kill people off, how did that come to you?
Well, it's funny you say it's unique because I thought it was unique because I had never seen anything like it. But if you go online, apparently I'm ripping off every movie in the world that I've never heard of from Japan. But anyways,
don't listen to that.
People are already saying you guys ripped off Squid Game. I'm like, we came out 3 years before Squid Game. But anyways, it's all good. But I think we just wanted to. We had to 8 celebrities because we couldn't go for budgetary reasons. We couldn't do more, and less would have been, I don't think, enough. So we wanted to come up with the challenges for each person that kind of went with their personality, right? So Ula's character had to do the memory game where she had to match all her selfies. And then basically Kat had to do the chess thing, and the YouTuber had to do the human pinata. Yeah. So we had to come up with, the different challenges, which, by the way, the producer came up with that one, the human pinata, my producer Mike. So I'm not the only depraved weirdo around here. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun to come up with the challenges and the actual I guess punishments that they come up with. They're pretty fun.
Now, on top of writing, directing, and appearing, you're also an editor. How big of a role did you have in cutting the final version of this film?
Every step I edited
Wow.
a piece of this film. Yeah, I didn't have any assistant. Well, Michael, my producer, helped me leaps and bounds with visual effects, dealing with the visual effects people and like getting it all put together. But as far as cutting it, I cut I cut all my movies 100%. Yeah.
Now, is that something that you self-taught yourself over the years? Did you go to school for, because editing is a skill.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things where it's like you doing it because of nobody else will do it kind of thing. I had a friend when I first moved to Vancouver, and this is where I say we started making short films. He was going, my friend Matt, um, who's a VFX artist now out in Montreal, very talented guy, super talented. Um, he was going to school out here when I first moved here in the film program out at it was called AI at the time,
Mm-hmm.
Arts Institute. I think it's changed, but he started doing short films and he needed an actor, and I'm like, I'll act. And, we got so I was just like, I'll be your actor, and then I sat in with him on a bunch of editing sessions, and he basically taught me how to edit, the gist of it, and I just started to every after he moved away and I had to do it myself. I'm like, oh crap, he moves now. I have to do it myself. So I started doing it and editing, and it's just practice, 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 and now I've edited like so much stuff. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I'm an amateur. Well, I've been doing it for 20 years. I guess I'm not getting paid for it, so I guess I am an amateur. But people
Me
don't realize let's say you have a 5 minute clip and you want to edit it, basic, add some effects, whatever. That can take up to 3 to 4 hours. I mean, it's a process and it
the
takes a
editor,
lot of time.
the editor is the unsung hero because the editor almost puts in more work than anybody in the entire film. Because let's say you have a 20, like for Funhouse, 24-day shoot, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
and I edited for 6 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's brutal. you know, those editors who aren't getting paid, it's brutal. And I've been there. I most of the editing throughout my life I didn't get paid for. It's a hard skill to learn, and it's underpaid and it's underappreciated, I think.
Now, do you know? I've never asked this question to any of our guests, and we've had former editors. We've had editors on our show. Like the big, not big, but medium, good sized budget films. When it comes time to the editing, do you know like what is the normal size team to edit? Like, let's say a $5 million movie. How many people would be involved in the cutting of the final product?
I think you'll have your main editor, but first you'll get some. Usually they get somebody to do a rough cut, basically for the editor,
Mm-hmm.
like put it all together. It's not necessarily the rough cut, but they compile all the scenes and whatnot and put it into a very loose cut. And then the editor will come in with, I think, at least one or two assistant editors. And honestly, I couldn't tell you because I've never had
Yeah.
a situation where I've been had an assistant. So yeah, I know that they do. Like if you look in the credits of like bigger movies, there's like a team of editors.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, no, that would be wonderful to
Well,
have.
yeah, I mean it's awesome because, like I said, you wrote it, directed, and we know when a film does go into post production, it's usually the director that sits in with the editor to make sure everything is great. You were the whole package, so you didn't have
Yeah,
anybody over, looking over your shoulder.
and that helps. It can be great, but I always want to, I always, it's not that I don't trust anybody because I'm sure there's thousands of better editors than me, but I just don't trust that somebody's going to scour the footage the way I am to get the best
Mm-hmm.
because I'm meticulous and knows, like, I'm a perfectionist in that sense. I'm not really in life other than like in filmmaking, but I go through every single second of every performance. And then I even like Frankenstein stuff together that shouldn't work, but sometimes you need to, right? And I
Yeah.
sometimes like take audio from one clip and put it because I like the sound of it and put it with other clips. So I'm really meticulous in that sense, and hopefully it shows. And that's not to say I wouldn't be like happy to hand over the editing reins to somebody else, because that's a lot of time.
It's
You're
a
sitting
lot. 6 months is a
could be
long
writing
time.
another script, when you're sitting there editing. But yeah, no, I love doing that as well, seeing it all come together.
Nice. Now, in Funhouse, how much practical effects, how much CGI was used in the film?
You know what? There was a really awesome mix of both. Like we had practical effects artist Michelle Grady, who did all like the practical effects, like the arm rip and
Mm-hmm.
the axe. Like they were all practical, and then we enhanced them with a team out of Mexico who did all of our visual effects. Just went above and beyond for our budget. They just killed it. We had like
Nice.
400 visual effects in this movie, which is ridiculous. Like we had no idea how much work it was going to be. Like I had to end up doing visual effects too. Like I did all the news backgrounds and all that stuff, and I learned, so it was a big learning curve for me as well. Um, and that was awesome. But yeah, no, the I think that's the best way to do it, because pure CG, unless you have like top dollar, like you're
Mm-hmm.
doing Lord of the Rings stuff, it's very obvious sometimes to see if it's just pure CG. Whereas if you mix practical effects with the CG just to complement it, I think it can really help a lot. Yeah.
I'm not going to name the movie, but I saw a movie, a very high budget horror movie recently that, you could tell they had the money, and they used a lot of CGI. And by the end of the film, because of the amount of CGI they used, just became really apparent.
Yeah.
It's like, this is me guessing. It's like, gee, we have an extra $2 million laying around in the budget. We might as well spend it, and let's just put it into the CGI effects. So
Yeah.
your feeling is too much CGI can be a detriment to a film.
Well, a good example, I think everybody probably, I thought it was a good film, but I think it took you out of it, was I Am Legend,
Okay.
where they went for full CGI on the zombies or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
creatures were, and although it worked sometimes, some other times it just seemed cartoonish,
Yeah.
or video game ish, So I think they should have gone for more practical effects and then complemented it with the CG when you needed it. But you
Okay.
know,
Yeah, I agree. I could totally see that. So let's go back now. Now you said The Evil in Us was your first feature film. You meant that was the first film that you directed, correct?
the first, one I got out, the first feature that I got out produced, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and you also wrote that, and you also directed that, and that is a story which involves cannibalism in it. Um, h- how do you feel looking back on it, since it's been what, like 6 years now or more when you actually shot it? How do you feel about, when looking back on your first feature film? Now that some time has passed, how do you feel about The Evil in Us? Are you proud of how that movie turned out?
It's funny. I watched it the other day for the first time in probably a couple of years, because it's on Prime,
Mm-hmm.
Amazon Prime, so I figured I should watch it. And I'm like I said, I'm a perfectionist, so I always want. I'm like, why can't it be as good as 28 Days Later? But then it's like we had 1/28 the budget of 28 Days Later, unfortunately. So it's like I'm very proud of what we did with what we had. I really am. I think that it was super ambitious to do a movie like that for like a couple hundred grand.
Mm-hmm.
With in the beginning it seemed like, oh, it was a contained movie, but then we in the end it had like 30 characters, like 30 actors and 10 locations, whereas like we were gonna start it with one location, six actors, and that's it. So it went pretty crazy, but I'm super proud of it. It was one of the funnest experiences I had. I had lost my father of about 2 months before I directed that movie, and I was really worried that I was gonna fail and ruin the movie. but it became like this kind of cathartic, healing experience for me.
Hmm.
And just I delved into it, and it helped me get through that time. Whereas I thought, oh, this is gonna be the worst experience. I'm not ready to do this. I'm grieving, but yeah, it turned out to be a really helpful experience.
I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that movie, and did you mention, I believe earlier in this interview, that that was your first dive into horror?
there was. I'd written one other horror before called Hell's Ridge, which I'm still trying to get off the ground. I think that for me is my because I want to get stuff off the ground. Like I wrote that as okay, this is a horror movie I would want to see. I would want to make, but realistically, that movie would cost like $5 million to do correctly. I think you could probably do it for a little less, but 5 million because it's got some CG. It's got a lot of action. Not a lot of action, but it's like
Hmm.
the Evil Dead on steroids, taking place in a sane asylum, which I think is a fantastic concept. I optioned it a while back, but nothing ever happened with it, and I won a contest with it. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Um, Evil in Us, yeah. So it was. I didn't have any horror writing experience except for Hell's Ridge, and we discussed it with my producing partners, and we're like, write something small we can do for 150 grand. We ended up getting like 200 grand, but I wrote it specifically like, okay, we got to do this really for the cheap, right?
Hmm.
And so it was like it's like about a group of friends who go to a cabin on the 4th of July and they are partying and taking, doing cocaine, and unbeknownst to them, the cocaine was laced with a no neurotropic virus that was manufactured by the government to like we got a lot of flack online for that because it was a right-wing senator that was behind it. He was vying for presidency, and he created this drug in order to create chaos in the world, and he was going to be the savior that gets the antidote or fixes it. But it was also during the time of bath salts, so I'd seen some
Yeah.
really crazy stuff and heard some really weird stuff about bath salts, so it kind of had that feel to it. But one thing that I still haven't seen in other movies that I think is unique to Evil in Us is the fact that when the people, the zombies, they get the virus, they don't only go after like people who aren't on it; they go after whoever's nearest. So they have
Yeah.
zombies fighting zombies, and I think that was a unique twist that gets overlooked in that. And
Yeah.
it's also they come down from it, so it's like a really bad drug trip that they come off of, and they just realize they've eaten their friend. It's like
Hmm.
imagine that. It's like talk about
You're
bad.
right. That is unique, and it's not. In fact, I don't remember besides the Evil in Us really seeing that anywhere else. There's quite a bit of gore in the Evil in Us, which is great. Looking back again, do you feel like you balanced the gore nicely with the story, or if you had a redo, would you have cut it back a little bit?
Honestly, yeah, I think it had a nice amount. I think I would have gone further with the, you know, because you only had so much time. Like some of those sequences, we basically had to like shoot so fast. Like some of the fight sequences with the zombies, that was like a couple hours. Whereas,
Yeah.
I know now, like you need time. Like even in Funhouse, like our big, huge fight scene we did in like 6 or 7 hours. Like you need 3, 4 days to do a kick-ass scene, and I think we did an amazing job.
Hmm.
I think time. I think that's what I would like more of in it. I think that's with any indie filmmaker, they want more time to make it. But I would go. I would have gone darker and a little bit. I would have delved into more of the psychology behind what your best friends and you're tearing each other apart. And I think that I wish I would have gone a little delve deep into the psychology behind that because that would be very devastating for a person to do that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
I know we did to an extent. Like when the character wakes up, he's basically seen what he's done and he tries to basically kill himself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Now, walking away from directing The Evil in Us, it being your first job as directing a feature film, what did you come away completely surprised learning that you had no idea going into that film as a director?
as a director, oh man.
I
I
mean,
just
the first time directing, I'm sure there were a lot of like, you know, learning lessons that you got.
I think I learned more about what not to do, and I think that's a similar theme for most first time directors. Like made all the mistakes you can make, seriously. And one thing I'll go back on is if you're gonna do a oneer, like a one shot, like I love one shots.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody who doesn't know what a one shot is, it's just a long take of one
Long
shot. Some
sequence.
some movies are done in one shots, right? That's a kind of a novelty thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're never really one shots anymore, but they look like one shots, like a Birdman or
Yeah.
like I think it was 2000 or 1917 or whatever that World War one.
Yeah. There.
And
Oh, go on.
no, but that I think it was a. I haven't seen it actually. I should, but I think that's a one shot. Even though I'm sure they cut it up in places. Like it wasn't like they did 1 hour and a half long. But anyways, my point is we tried to do a few one shots where it's like you should practice them first because you don't. Number one, you don't know if they're going to be interesting enough. So you have like 4 minutes of somebody walking along a dock, which we have before you hit the jump scare. It's like you know you learn that you need to have other things happening. So little things like that I learned, and also basically give yourself time because sometimes we'd be shooting for like 22 hours, and that's not only grueling for yourself, but it's unsafe. And it's that they're getting more into that these days, talking about the safety of people. And it's totally true. If you're on set for like 20 hours, you're gonna make mistakes, and
Oh yeah.
people you're dealing in things, especially stunts or anything like that. People can get hurt, so you have to be very careful. I remember one time we almost lost our entire camera rig and $100,000 when we were on this dock. It was my own fault. There was this giant spider that came walking on the dock, and that was the biggest spider I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, holy shit, look at the size of that spider. And everybody walks over that side of the dock, and we almost tipped.
Oh,
Or we had like a gimbal on there and a crane like with the camera, and the whole dock almost tipped over. We luckily all ran to the other side before. Would have been my own fault, but it was pretty funny. But it was a spider freaking that big.
talking about long shots, it's not something new, but it's being done a lot more frequently in films recently. I had a guest on the other night who mentioned that Alfred Hitchcock would love to do long shots, back in the day. Um, Now, the viewer, unless you are really paying attention, they don't really notice the long shot. It's more of a background feel that it adds to the intensity of any film. Do you agree with that? Do you think it adds, if it's done properly, it adds to the film in a way that the audience just may not even consciously pick up on?
I think unless you're in film, like unless you're looking for it, I don't think you notice it. I
No.
remember Goodfellas is probably a good example of my favorite oneer, where Henry Hill's taking Karen into the Copacabana,
Hmm.
and it's not that long of a shot, but it's amazing. It's just
And it
I
follows him through the
follows him
kitchen.
through the kitchen, through the back door, and that was a real oneer, of course, before they had cuts and stuff. I think they did that number of 6 times or whatever it was before they got it right. And that's Scorsese, of course, but it's like that to me. Before I got into film, I don't remember thinking about it as a wonder. I just remember thinking the feeling that it evoked about what this guy's life was like, right? And I think that's what's behind the great one shots, right? I'm trying to think of any other huge ones that I
So,
love.
as a director, how difficult is it to pull off a good one shot, sequence?
You have to be so prepared. Like the Funhouse, for instance, there was a oneer again. Didn't learn my lesson. There was a oneer when they introduced the people that was like 5 minutes long, 6 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we first go follow Casper from his waking up in the Funhouse to him going out into the common room and meeting everybody in the house was a oneer.
Wow.
We had to cut it down because there was too much time in between some of the movements,
Mm-hmm.
and it got boring, and it got you lose engagement if you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
We would have done it again. I would have practiced it more, I would have made sure that we there's stuff going on at all times, because that's just it. You need to have something interesting moving the
Yeah.
story forward, even in those oneers. Otherwise, they die, and that's the problem we had. So I had to cut it into like 5 chunks, and
Okay.
it still works. Luckily,
Yeah.
we didn't have any backups. That's the crazy thing. That's why me as an editor in one of those situations, we didn't back up. We had that scene was a oneer. I had to like cut it together in so many weird ways because I had to find like reactions from different parts of this. It was crazy, but it was fun, you know.
That does sound like a lot of fun. So we're almost out of time.
Yep.
Do you have anything in the works right now that you're working on, writing, getting ready to put out there?
Yeah, I just finished filming a movie a couple days ago. It's out in Kelowna. A film I wrote called Keeper of the Real. It's it's kind of a different, very different from things I've done. It's like a romantic. It's got like a supernatural romantic dramedy, if there is such a thing. It's based about a guy's transferring old Super 8 footage, and he becomes obsessed with a woman on one of the old reels that is like 60 years old, and she starts to visit him in the office at night, and he thinks he's going crazy because he's on meds for depression and this, that,
Mm-hmm.
and the other. And then there's a huge twist at the end, but it's more of a. It's got a few horror elements, but it's very lighthearted and happy. My producing partner Mike wanted to have a happy ending for once, where not everybody dies. So I'm like, okay, let's do something like that. But I think it's a real special movie. It's really got a lot of heart to it. I hope a lot of fun, a little dark here and there, but definitely a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm just gonna start editing that right away. And
Nice.
I won a contest. Now it's been a while, but in 2020, end of 2020, I won this Page International, which is a big screenwriting contest where I won. I think there was 8,200 scripts, and I got first place in drama for
Congratulations.
for a movie I called. It was called Mississippi Rattlesnake. Now it's called Awaken the Wolves, and it's a really dark drama about a guy who hitchhikes across the country to visit his dying mother, and on the way he gets picked up by a tattoo artist, and she's on the run from her addict ex-boyfriend, and she has carrying something she doesn't know that the mob wants, and
Yeah.
he's a low-level mob guy, and they have to come out. It's kind of like True Romance meets, I don't know, Hell or High Water, but it's been my passion project for years, and I think
Nice.
it's my best script, and I've had a few near misses in getting it produced, but that's definitely the one I'm hoping to get
Nice.
produced next, because I think it has a lot of potential, especially for the female lead. Yeah,
Congratulations on winning first place on that. Out of 80,000, that's an accomplishment.
eight, not 80, but
Oh, eight. Still, that's an
yeah.
accomplishment. That's a
No, it's
huge accomplishment. Jason, thank you so much for being on our show. This hour just flew by. It's been fascinating to talk and to hear your thoughts and what went into Funhouse and the evil in us. Guys, if you want to check them out, where is Funhouse available if people want to check it out?
right now in the States. It's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV and uh, Direct TV. Over in Europe, it's on most of the streaming platforms. We haven't got our distribution in Canada yet, so hoping to have that up and running soon.
That sucks. It's
Other-
not available in your
I know
home country.
it's not even available in my home country yet, so if you need to see it, hit me up. I'll send you a link. But no, I really appreciate you talking to me, John, and all you do for indie horror, and all that. So it's
Thank,
been a pleasure
no,
talking.
it's been my pleasure. And thank you for the compliment. And thank you for being on our show. I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in. Stay safe. And on behalf of Jason and myself, stay walking, guys. Good night.
Thank you. Take care.